Greetings to everyone. This is our introductory class to World Evangelism, and this semester we're going to be sharing quite a bit of information and quite a bit from personal experiences as well, and doing a whole bunch of stuff. I hope you'll find it a very interesting class, and I hope you'll find it a lot of fun as well. It will be for me. I have enjoyed very much being a missionary. I have enjoyed very much serving in this way. I hope I've learned quite a bit over those 40-some years now that we've been working in Colombia, South America. And I hope that I've learned quite a bit through the studies that I've done collateral to that. And with that, I hope to be able to share with you folks some of what I've learned and picked up over the years. Now, I'm very much aware that as we do anything, things change. And my experiences would never be your experiences. And what worked very well for me in one particular time doesn't necessarily work very well today. And what's worked very well for me probably wouldn't work necessarily always so well for you. The reason is very simple. Times change, peoples change, cultures change and adapt, and we're different. What works for me, what suits my nature, probably won't quite suit your nature perfectly. Given that, it still is very much a fact that we do learn from experience, not only our own, but that experience of others as well. And if we fail to do that, then we're often condemned to repeat the mistakes that other people have made and have perhaps learned from. We either learn from their mistakes or we repeat their mistakes. So for that reason, I think I've got a lot of valuable information for you to share. And we're going to try and make this a fun class as well, one that you enjoy coming to watch every week, participating in, doing the homework assignments, and all of that kind of stuff. So as we do that, we'll be moving forward. Let me begin first by introducing myself. Now, this is always a little bit of a difficult part of this class for a couple of reasons. By one token, or by one side of the coin there, I'm reluctant to do it. I don't want to appear to be bragging on myself. I don't have any reason to do that. I don't have any need to do that. Yet at the same time, I think that I owe it to you to let you guys know where I'm coming from and the basis or the foundation upon which I'm called to teach here at this institution. First of all, I am a missionary. First and foremost, that's my calling. That's been my life ministry. That has been my work. I left for Colombia, South America the very first time while I was still in high school on a missions trip. Those things weren't that common back then. I mowed yards all summer, and I went down on student standby, which meant you got a student ID card, you showed up at the airport, you paid 10% of the ticket. That was all. Imagine that, if we could do that today. And with 10% of the ticket, you stood there. If there's an empty seat, you got on. If there wasn't, you didn't. Now, I made it down to Colombia. I traveled around with a missionary at that who was working in Colombia at that time. His name was Warren Sanders, a fellow that I'd met at church camp and that I admired very much and that I looked up to, both as a person and as a missionary. I got down there and I spent the summer working with him, traveling around, watching what he did, doing with him, listening to him, seeing what he was doing, staying with him. Didn't speak any Spanish, so I was quite limited in what I could do, but I could observe and I could learn from that. I saw a lot of things that summer in Colombia. I saw a lot of extreme poverty, and like most Americans, that bothered me. I wanted to do something that I could do maybe to help. My first inclination would have been what most Americans would have as their first inclination. Maybe I can get some money and give to them. Maybe I can get some used clothing and send down. Maybe we can help them build a better house, something of that nature. Because you see, I confused material poverty with spiritual poverty. And I did not realize that the material poverty on one side usually grows out of spiritual poverty on the other. And if we don't deal with the issues of spiritual poverty, we'll never really deal with the issues of material poverty either. You can give a person a new house, you can give them all new clothing, but if something is wrong in their life that they could not secure that for themselves, probably giving it to them won't really help. And in the end, they'll probably wind up once again just about as poor as what they were when they started. And so for that reason, giving out material things usually doesn't solve material poverty. Now that might seem like an oxymoron. You say, wait a minute, these guys are poor, they don't have things. So I give them things, that's going to solve the problem. No, it doesn't. Because you see, there's a reason why they're in that condition. And why? it usually goes back to the vices, to the lifestyle, to their values, to things of that nature which have caused them to be unable to prosper in their own culture, in their own economy, and their own climate. And so giving them things doesn't solve that problem. It simply kicks the can down the road a little while and winds up leaving them with the very same problems they have. So for that reason, and by the way, that will be the topic for quite a bit of our teaching a little bit later on as we deal with what we're to be doing as missionaries and in world evangelism and how we're to go about it. So I don't want to spend all my time right now talking about it, but I do want to talk about why I went back. As I looked at these problems and as I observed them, Warren Sanders would look and he would say, they're not Christians. They're not Christians. They're not Christians. That was his answer. Every time I'd point out that children were filthy and naked and filled with parasites, they were living in this hut that didn't have decent walls or a roof that leaked and all that kind of stuff. They weren't getting enough to eat. They didn't have tools to work with. They hadn't been able to buy their own farm. They hadn't been able to build their own house. And the answer is always the same. They're not Christians. And I'd come back, but why? Well, the father spends all his money on alcohol. The woman's out, gossiping with her neighbors and things of that nature rather than taking care of the kids. And all of this comes back on them. And the effects are the poverty that you see. And until we change their hearts, we're never going to change the conditions in which they live. Well, then my next question is, well, then why didn't somebody share the gospel with them? And his answer again was, well, it's pretty simple. I'm one person. This country at that time had 28 million people. How am I going to get around to 28 million people? I'm doing my best, but I'm just one person in a country the size of Texas and Oklahoma with 28 million people. We need more people to come and work. Well, then I made the next dumb question. I said, well, why don't more people come to work? And he looked back at me, with a sad expression on his face, and he said, Dale, I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know. You see, I saw the need. And I answered the call, and I came. Why other people don't come? I don't know. Maybe they can't see the need. Maybe they don't have that concern in their heart to want to do something about it. But for whatever reason, they don't come. But I'll tell you what. You look into your own heart. You ask yourself the question why you're not coming. And the reason you're not coming to Columbia to work and try and make life better is probably the very same reason all of them will have. And so in that seeing the need, I saw my call as well. And so for me, the nature of the missionary call was to see the need. And then with Isaiah say, here I am, Lord, send me. And he did. And now some 43 years later, I'm still working in Columbia, doing what I went there to do at very first. And that's make life better for people, both in this world and then obviously in the next world as well. So that was my missionary call, and that's who I am, and that's what I am, is a missionary. Now, from there I want to go to the next step. What basis do I teach upon? Well, certainly I teach on the basis of more than 40 years of practical experience. I've had the advantage that I could try everything down there. I could find out what works and what doesn't work. I'd try this for a while, and if it didn't work today, I'd try something else, and then I'd try something else until I found something that worked. And once I had something to work with, use it. Well, after a while, it quit working. So what do? You try something new again until you find the next step. You find what works in that day, in that town, in that culture. And once you find that, you go with that. One of the great advantages I've always had as a missionary, I never had somebody say to me, we never did it that way before, because we've never done anything any way before. It's always all new. And so we could try everything, and we did. So I do teach on the basis of my experience. But here's where I want to get onto something else as well. Many times missionaries have had the reputation of not always being academics, and sometimes that's true. We are practitioners, and we are very much working in a culture where we're teaching on a basic level. People are often semi-literate. They're often totally ignorant of the Bible. And so we're teaching those very first steps. We're teaching the very beginnings of everything. Of economics, of sometimes literacy, reading and writing and doing math, and certainly of biblical truths as well. And so for that reason, a lot of times missionaries haven't had or felt the need to study more, to do anything beyond that. But I've always been a person that I've been very curious about things. And when I'm curious about something, I start asking why. What can we do? What should we do? What do we need to do in this situation, in this circumstance? Maybe to work more effectively, maybe to do a better job of preaching the gospel and sharing the good news. And so for that, my solution was study. And I'd take classes in this university and that university. I'd do it online, which back in those days, that was really cutting edge. Nowadays, you guys are just, that's normal for you. But back then, you did it, you mailed off and you got cassettes for a while. Then after that, the internet got started and all that. So I've come up through all that process where distance learning was a very new thing and a very unusual thing. I did it because I was in Colombia. I couldn't get back to the States. I'd mail off my stuff and be 3 or 4 months till I got an answer and the next cassette that I was supposed to listen to and all that. You guys probably don't even know what a cassette is. That's a little tape thing that we had to stick in a tape player and listen to back before we had the internet and all these little recording devices that you can use now and that kind of thing. So I took those classes, and I found out one thing. If you take enough classes long enough at some university, they kind of get tired of having you around. We got to get rid of this guy. He's been here forever. We're starting to look bad. And so they'll give you a degree. And so I got a degree here, and I got a degree there, and kept working, and got 2 master's degrees, a basic Master of Arts, your 3-semester, 4-semester type thing, and then on. Then I did an advanced master's degree, one that was like a 3-year deal, that type of thing. Then I started working on my doctorate. Got part way through it. I was doing well, and all of a sudden in Colombia they changed something. And what they changed was they put in a law, if you were going to do a job, you had to have a degree in that job. Well, that hadn't been the case before. Any degree had worked for anything down there. So when they did that, I thought, whoops, I'm taking this degree in social sciences, basically. It was missions intercultural studies, but I was working in the area of social psychology. Why do people do what they do? And if I was going to be working in our Christian day school, which we had started, I needed a degree in education. So I flipped over and I did all the coursework for an education doctorate as well. And so I wound up with a double major PhD from Trinity International University as well, one in missions intercultural studies in the area and the modality of social psychology, which is kind of like sociology and anthropology and clinical psychology and all that. But it's one where you study why people do what they do, and how you can encourage them to change and to do things differently. And so took that. Then what they added on education classes, that made it so I could use it in Colombia to work with our Christian day school, which is something that I was wanting to do as well. So as I did all this stuff, things kept coming together. We kept doing more and more things in Colombia. I would morph out of one type of ministry into another ministry, because as I did something for a while, I would always trade the Colombians to do that as well. As the Colombians began to do better and better at what I was doing, I started stepping out of the way and I let them run with the ball. The goal of every missionary should be to work himself or herself out of a job. And so as soon as I had somebody to do what I was doing, I said, okay, you guys do it. And then I'd go move into some other area of ministry that they could not yet quite do. So that's how I wound up being a school psychologist and yet at the same time being a missionary down there in Colombia. So working with all that, then we kept moving forward. So I do have a dual major PhD. I have 2 master's degrees, and I have a bachelor also with a dual major. And so with that, I have a pretty significant amount of academic training to go along with my experience. And I've tried to ask around to see how many other fellows or gals too that there might be out there like that. And quite honestly, we have about a dozen or so PhDs, but most of them had a few years on the mission field, 6, 8, 10, 12 maybe, and then for whatever reason came back and then did their doctorate and went into teaching. I think I'm only maybe one of 2 or 3 who actually did a doctorate, then went back to the mission field and used what they learned and what they trained for in that doctorate for any considerable period of time. And so for that reason, I think I can offer you guys a unique educational experience. Someone who has both long-term practical experience and then a terminal degree in the field as well. And then on top of that, kind of like the frosting on the cake, having actually used what they learned in their doctorate on the field for a considerable period of time. As I mentioned, I'm a little bit reluctant to say that, and I don't do it to brag on myself. Honestly, I don't need to do that. I know I'm not going to press you with telling you all that as far as who, some big shot doctor we have here going to teach us. I do it because I want you to know that you're going to get your money's worth in this class, and I'm going to make it, to the best of my ability, a class that you consider to be one of your very best and one of your most valuable, and the one that you will use more and more through whatever career option you choose, whether it be in ministry, in the secular field, or hopefully for some of you, in missions. And so in doing that and moving forward in that way, I want to make this class hopefully one of your best this semester. And when you get finished with your college degree, one that you can say, that class really, really helped me in everything else that I'm going to be doing. And that's what I'm going to be working for. That's what we're going to be trying to accomplish in this class. And I'll do my best to see that that happens. Throughout the class, as you do your responses and all, give me feedback. If there's something I can change and improve, if I can't do it for this class, I'll do it in the next. And certainly I can respond to you directly through those feedbacks that we'll be doing. Now, how's this class going to work? Well, I'm going to have 2 videos, Lord willing, that I give you every week. You'll watch one on perhaps a Monday or Tuesday. You'll watch the next one on Wednesday or Thursday. And then on Friday or Saturday, I want you to give me feedback where you'll be posting online your comments, your observations, your thoughts, your questions, the things you liked, the things you didn't like, the things that made sense, the things that didn't make sense. And then I'll write back and answer those. I'll respond to you, Lord willing, every single week. Now, I will be for most of this class down in South America, in Colombia, heading out on the edge of the jungle, picking a banana off the banana plant right in front of me, watching the monkeys and the parrots in the jungle behind me. We do that through a radio link. So I'll be sitting down there in the jungle answering your questions and talking back to you as long as we have internet. Now, sometimes it rains so hard we lose that radio connection. Sometimes we're without electricity for days on end. A tree falls down out of the jungle and takes out the power lines, and it takes them sometimes to get out there and get that kind of stuff fixed. And so when that happens, I might be without electricity. But I'll do my best to get back to you every single week and respond to your post. So as you do this class, be diligent, please. Do the readings that are assigned in the syllabus. Watch the videos. Think about them. And then respond in a meaningful way. Don't just send me a little bit of fluff. I don't have time for that, and I don't want you wasting your time either. Let's make this class worthwhile. To make it worthwhile, you guys have to work with me, and I have to work with you. I'll do my part. I'll do my very best. And I want to ask you guys to do the same. And I think in that way, we can make this class a very good class that you're going to look forward to, that you're going to enjoy, and I'm confident you'll get a good grade at it simply because we're going to make it fun. And usually when learning is fun, you do well at it. And in that, we'll see how the semester goes. But I have every reason to believe it's going to go great and that you'll enjoy it as much as I'm going to enjoy sharing with you. With that, I'll say, okay, let's get started.